Should you eat that cake in the break room?
What makes the ultimate office pet?
Is the shuffling from the next bathroom stall a demonic rite, or something far worse?
On the Work-Life Imbalance podcast, you can find terrible answers to some of your most uncomfortable questions.
Whether it's coming to work with late-stage syphilis,
or staying on trend with pants full of angry raccoons.
I'm Frank Eastman.
And I'm Derek Lewis.
Two guys who ought to know better on Work-Life Imbalance.
Find us at WLIcast.com, on iTunes, or wherever fine podcasts are found.
People like that. How can you cut their throats?
It isn't easy.
No one's been nice to me since October 1891.
If only they didn't trust us.
Which isn't fair. Here we are, three desperate criminals who'll stop at nothing to escape from Devil's Island, and we have to fall in with nice people.
You guys act like you don't want to cut their throats.
Well, speaking for myself, I'd just as soon not.
After all, it might spoil their Christmas.
I don't care how nice they are. They're not going to soften me up. We're escaping, and this is our only chance. We came here to rob them, and that's what we're going to do. Beat their heads in, gouge their eyes out, cut their throats. As soon as we wash the dishes.
This is the emergency podcast system. This is not a test. Movies are bombing all over the country. They are posing as movies you already know. They may already be in your theaters, your neighbor's home, or even your own. Do not panic. Specialists have been dispatched. They will help you identify these pretenders and defend you against this invasion of the remake. Please stand by for further instructions.
Welcome to the Invasion of the Remake podcast. I'm your host, Jason Bishop, and with me today, as always, is Sam Stepanenko, and guess what? Everybody knows this by now. We're no angels.
No, this one is really apropos. We're nice people, but we're not angels. Well, okay, I'm nice people. We'll just leave that for you to decide about Jay.
Yeah, it depends on who you ask.
Yes.
Yeah, this was actually an interesting one. You know, we like to mix it up. It's been a while since we've done an older film like this.
And as always, I was pleasantly surprised again.
Yeah, well, 55 and 1989 here, but thinking how far those are apart and how long it's been since the 89 now. Like, that's
yes.
30 years. So it's almost due for another go-around.
Let's hope that it's better than the 89. It's been a while since we hacked on a remake.
I know. We've had such a good run for the start of the year.
The streak is over.
The streak is over for sure. But it wasn't for lack of trying on their part.
No, and you know what? If I had watched it by itself, and I made a comment about this on somebody's asking about remakes on Facebook or something, and I made a comment, is if you just watch it for what it is instead of thinking of it as having an original source material, it can be quite enjoyable. And I think... And unfortunately, sometimes on this podcast, we don't get to make that distinction because the remake isn't that bad of a film. But when you compare it to that original film, which is a fucking masterpiece.
Yeah, I'd never seen the original up until we watched it for this show, but I had seen the 89 version before, and I didn't like it then either when I saw it. Like, it's not my cup of tea. There is some dialogue I quite appreciate, but for the most part, it's full of unlikable characters, and you don't really change your mind by the end of it.
Not really. I mean, Sean Penn's performance was excellent, and he was probably the most likable character in the movie.
Yeah.
Just because of his naivete, right?
Yeah.
He's a sweet guy who's made some mistakes. He's finally found his calling by the end of the movie. And the, what the heck is his name? The young priest...
that was John C. Reilly.
John C. Reilly, yes. Yeah. I love John C. Reilly.
This and what was the other?
Casualties of War.
Yeah, Casualties of War was the same year.
Yeah.
Yeah, and those were his film debuts.
Yeah. This was his debut year for sure.
Yeah.
Right. And he was wonderful in this film. And he, again, another likable character. But those were probably the two only genuinely likable characters.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting, like John C. Reilly, who plays a fairly significant character, never actually has a name. Like,
no, he's just.
It comes priest. Off like he's an extra when you look at the cast list.
Yeah, he's just the young priest.
The young priest. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, he was a significant role. His influence on Penn's character is quite significant.
Yeah, because there's kind of some hero worship and mentoring from who he thinks is Father Brown. Sean Penn's who's pretending to be this priest, and I don't think his character had ever been thought of in any kind of way where a higher moral character.
That's right.
Both of them are kind of learning from each other in some ways.
Yeah, and it was really enjoyable. By far my favorite part of the movie, because especially when you're comparing it to the original, like you're right, it's full of unlikable characters. I mean, De Niro's character, wrong. He used so many of his stereotypical quirks and stuff in this movie. Like, it was a classic De Niro performance that did not work for the film.
Yeah, no, it does. It feels like Travis Bickle trying to be a priest.
Yeah, to a certain extent, that's right, yes. Yeah.
Are you looking at me? Are you looking at me? 5 Hail Marys. And kiss my ass.
Yeah, and it just was really hard to really enjoy this film, especially after having watched the original film, which is just full of fantastic dialogue.
Yeah, by happenstance, I kind of did them in reverse this time around, just because of availability, and trying to find that 55 was a little harder than I thought it was going to be. But, it was worth the wait. I was very pleasantly surprised, especially because I was like, I wasn't crazy about the 89. I'm like, how close are these?
Not very.
Not very. Like, thematically, sure, but they are very different movies.
They are very different movies. And it's funny, because I was watching the original, I'm like, this feels like it was a stage play that was transported into a movie. And
correct.
Hence it was.
Yes, it was a play written by Albert Housson, who wrote La Cuisine des Anges. And I have no idea if I got anywhere close to saying it properly. And eventually that was readapted as an American play, which eventually inspired the 1989 film. The American play was by Sam and Bella Spiewak, called My Three Angels.
Yeah, and there are no angels in the remake. I mean, Penn's is about as close as it gets. And I mean, that moment of redemption at the end of the movie is about as close as they get to being angelic, and that's...
Yeah, it feels like more they're just dodging the cops for most of the movie, rather than trying to do nice things. The nice things just kind of happen out of happenstance and things spilling out of their mouths that somewhat make sense to people.
Yeah, it's... and I'm like you, I did enjoy it when I saw it back in the late 80s, early 90s. I found it to be quite entertaining. But as I watched it, even as a standalone film, trying to separate it from the remake, or the original... I realized how much I don't like Neil Jordan films.
Yeah, Neil Jordan, I'm trying to think, you know what? Like, I like The Miracle. I'm on the fence about The Crying Game. It was a zeitgeist movie. It was way before its time, I think.
It was, but I think that it has a recognition it does because of the shock in the movie.
Yeah,
right?
I think Interview with the Vampire is a decent movie. I think The Company of Wolves is a good movie.
See, that one's my favorite of the Jordan films. Interview with the Vampires, as a fan of the original books, it's an enjoyable film, but certainly does not serve the source material anywhere near as well as it could have. But some amazing performances, and I certainly don't think it deserved the criticism it got when it came out. But he's more miss than hit for me. I find that Neil Jordan might be a little self-indulgent with his films sometimes.
Yeah, you can see that in most of his films, to be honest, where sometimes it gets a little overindulgent.
Yeah.
I would definitely agree with that. Now, the original film by Michael Curtis was also written by Ronald McDougall, who wrote Cleopatra. So there's also some really good pedigree behind this movie as well. Both of them have all-star casts.
They certainly do, and it's funny how few connections I could find with these all-star casts.
Yeah, I was surprised at how few I came up with as well. The original film here we'll go through real quick. We're No Angels, 1955, directed by Michael Curtis. Stars, holy shit, Humphrey Bogart.
Who I did not know was so capable of comedy.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, this is way after Casablanca, I think, kind of... At this point, I think he's kind of shaking off the crime noir, tough guy type of...
And he did it well,
so well. Peter Ustinov, we have talked about him before in episode 44, Logan's Run.
Oh, he was in that.
That's right.
And I knew he had. I couldn't find it, though. Because, every actor in here has like over 100 films in their IMDb.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Every actor.
I swear to God, I spent an hour just scrolling through
even John C. Reilly has over 100 in there.
It was ridiculous. ridiculous. I'm like, oh, for fuck's sakes, I'm going to stop at the first connection I find.
It's ridiculous, but
and
yeah.
a lot of the times I didn't find any. Joan Bennett was Amélie Ducoteau. Everybody's kind of got a French name in here. We actually did talk about her fairly recently in episode 177.
Suspiria.
Yeah.
One of my favorite episodes, actually.
Oh, mine too. Man, I can't say how much I love that remake. And tolerated the original. I know I'm in the minority on that one. Don't write me.
Oh, we've been written.
That's fine. I don't care. That's your opinion. You're welcome to it. And I've stated mine.
Yeah.
Basil Rathbone. No connections for us, but everybody should know that name. He's famous for roles like Captain Blood and most famously Sherlock Holmes.
Yes.
Lots and lots of Sherlock
And
Holmes.
I actually thought we had talked about him, but I couldn't find any.
No, I couldn't find it either. Maybe we've mentioned him in discussion at some point, but I thought we had as well, and I couldn't find it. Leo G. Carroll, who's probably most famous for being in North by Northwest, was Felix. John Felix was great. This really, I almost felt like he was somewhat in the early stages of dementia. The way his character was.
Yes.
John Bear, who was in Night of the Blood Beast. I just wanted to say Night of the Blood Beast.
That might be on our list to remake.
Maybe.
It definitely falls into that category, doesn't it?
Yeah. Gloria Talbot was in another one that I just wanted to say out loud, The Leech Woman.
Oh, yes.
Also starring Lee Penman and John Smith. I almost feel like John Smith was like, I'm dodging the cops, and I'm going to do it in the movies.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, but like, the difference between these two movies is just astounding because even though it's like these three prisoners who've escaped from prison, and they're walking around in their prison uniform still, which is wonderful.
This is Devil's Island, and apparently some of the low risk convicts get work release and get to walk freely
around town. Yeah.
Around town, and they're cheap labor essentially. So they're very used to having convicts running around in their convicts uniforms on this island.
Yes, yeah.
Which probably makes it a lot harder to look for three that aren't supposed to be.
Yes, yeah, and I that's part of the device of the movie, and I think that's what they're hinting at is and well, Bogey even says at the beginning of the movie, mm-hmm. He says we look like just every other parolee that's working in town right now. So he tells you outright, that they're going to have trouble finding them. I
mean, and if this sounds really fucking out there for you, keep in mind the movie takes place in 1895.
Yes.
So, different system.
Very much a different system, yeah. And again, they explain it really, really well that there are non-violent, low-risk criminals who are working in the town. They're on a work release program of some sort, but they have to go back to the prison at night. Mm-hmm. So they explain that fairly well so that you understand what's happening there. Mm-hmm. Right? Even though it still was a little disconcerting for them to be walking around into their prison.
Yeah, I mean, right off in the opening, they're kind of hiding behind some ship containers and things like that, and they overhear them saying they almost killed the guard, and then there's Bogey going, almost, I must be losing my touch.
Yeah. Yeah, in the beginning of the movie, I mean, actually,
that's dark shit, man.
Yeah, it is dark, but the way he delivers the line, it's funny.
It is funny,
right?
Despite the fact that he's technically not the violent one of the three of them, because he's in there.
He's a grifter, yeah.
He's a grifter. He's a con man, where the other two were in for murder.
Yes, right. And I love how they explain both their stories, how the murders came to be. They're not murders for the sake of murder. Both of them were crimes of passion.
Yes, right. His wife was cheating on him. And I love how they tell that story, too, because they do it in a light way. Like, this is part of their past. It's a dark part of their past, but it does come out as humor when they tell it, because it's like, well, we've come to terms with it. We're paying for it. I mean, we don't want to pay for it forever. That's why they escaped.
Yes. Right. Well, there's a great...
Ultimately, they're finding that they are good people.
They are, yeah. And that's what this whole movie's about, is that they're not bad people. They've done bad things, though.
Yeah, but initially their intent was to go back out in the world and get back to work.
Yeah. Of course, because they don't want to be imprisoned anymore.
Yeah, get back to work as in get back to the lifestyle they had before they went in, which got them in there in the first place.
And they were all criminals, but they weren't. But our two murderers weren't murders by trade. They were both circumstantial.
Yeah, and I like how they're all very different skill sets. Humphrey Bogart was the grifter, the con man, Kentuckian,
the forger.
Peter Ustinov was the safecracker.
Yes,
he could crack any lock. You get the feeling that Aldo Ray was just the muscle guy.
Because he's not dumb, but he's also...
I think I skipped past Aldo Ray when I was doing the cast.
I think you did, yes.
But, some guys of our generation who grew up with the movie called Secret and Nim would probably remember his voice from that. He did a few animated stuff. And you look at it, especially at his 70s career when he's a little older, there's a lot of Grindhouse in there. Really, this is probably one of his biggest movies,
which is funny because he is so good. He's so talented.
Good. So I was like, how did you land in some of these? Because he is so lovable in this movie.
He is, and all the performances, all three of our leads were amazing. Some of the
chemistry is so good.
Some of the supporting performances were a little bit weak, especially Paul.
Yeah,
Paul was.
Maybe that's probably has a lot to do with them bringing in him and Basil Rathbone in so late.
Yeah,
this movie's hour 15 in by the time you get to Paul and his uncle.
Yes, yeah, Paul, I just found he was by far the weakest performance. But at the same time, But
he comes from classic greats like Night of the Blood Beast.
Yes. Yeah, and I mean, he was a smaller part, but his turn as the heel later on was still really well done.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was actually...
Yeah, he does... he wasn't doing... Well, and I think that's what part of it. His character was pretending to love Isabel. They're trying to convince him to love Isabel, who they're really trying to get... Isabel's been pining for this guy for a year, who's been away for all this time, and with sights on marrying him. And these three thugs decide to get these two together, not to get them together so she can
get past it,
but so she could get past him and realize that he doesn't love her and she doesn't really love him either.
Yes.
And
they're successful in
and
that.
They are successful at that. And that was like a side quest, because initially Basil Rathbone, who actually owns the shop that's not doing too great, Humphrey Bogart was going to cook the books, just to make it look a little bit better, but Basil Rathbone's character just wasn't going to have it, Andre, and took the books before they could get cooked, and they're like, well, if we can't help him here, let's try to help somebody else in the family instead. Yeah,
and this is a turn, because they, like you said at the beginning, their intent is to hang around until they're all asleep and then murder and rob them, and use their business as a place to forge their documents to get off the island. And it's lovely how well it's done, and how they transition them from wanting to commit murder to wanting to help, because it's in steps. It's beautifully done in these wonderful little steps. There's this great scene where they're on the roof and they're fixing the roof. I don't know how they fixed it, considering they never did any actual work.
No, they climb up the roof and stare in every window that they can find to learn about the family. I think initially they're just trying to figure out where the cash spots are and stuff. I mean, they walked in and nobody came to the counter right away. They just started pocketing stuff.
They kept taking cigars. I love how they kept taking cigars.
The harmonica was what got me, where Aldo Ray grabs a harmonica, sticks it in his mouth, and starts playing a really complex song with no hands.
Yes.
There is no way that was ever going to happen. No. That couldn't happen. I don't care how skilled you are, that was probably impossible. Considering how complex that melody was.
Yeah, and how complex the harmonica is, when a lot of people don't realize how hard that is to actually play.
Yeah, I had one. They're hard.
Yeah, no, they are an instrument. They're not just noisemakers.
Yeah. All right, we're running into this like we're escaping jail, but let's do the trailer here and we'll get back into it.
And We're No Angels is the international comedy hit that's going to have you laughing like the devil, with Humphrey Bogart and his buddies as three wonderful and wacky fugitive convicts trying to break out of Devil's Island. They even have the bloodhounds confused, because these three happy outlaws have talent. For instance, Bogart's a genius. He can sell anybody anything.
Yes, that's better. No stomach at all. Stop breathing.
Peter Ustinov is an artist. He can open anything. That's how he got to Devil's Island in the first place.
Quiet, please.
Aldo Ray is the lover. He can, well, maybe we'd better not go into that.
You find me? That is, do I seem to you? Well, do I?
I could go to jail for the way I feel. I wasn't there already.
Beautiful Joan Bennett and Leo G. Carroll, the delightfully dim-witted topper of TV fame, just don't know what to make of their uninvited guest.
If only they didn't trust us.
Oh, it isn't fair. Here we are, three desperate criminals who'll stop at nothing to escape from Devil's Island, and we have to fall in with nice people.
But not everybody's so nice. There's that bad man, Basil Rathbone, to complicate everything.
Convicts, what are you doing here on Christmas Eve?
We're the three wise men.
And they really are. The three wise guys who have the solution to everybody's problem. Right in that little box.
Back to the 55. We've evaded the cops once again.
Once again.
I mean, I don't think I could stress enough how good the dialogue is in this movie. I was so impressed with it, and I wish writing was like this good with dialogue. It might feel a wee bit unnatural, but it kind of harkens back to the burlesque days where they'd be on the stage and have to convey a lot through dialogue.
It does, and it works so well because this is essentially a single set piece. It's different rooms, but it's a single set for the most part, right? Which is part of why it felt like a stage play, and that's why I was wondering, was this a stage play first? And sure enough, it was. I found out afterwards. But yeah, that's why the dialogue works so well, because the person who wrote the screenplay obviously felt an affinity for that stage play and wanted to capture that feeling as much as they could. Because the dialogue's snappy, it's quick, it's witty. I mean, Ustinov is so good. Like, there's something. I think I texted you. I said he felt kind of like he was channeling Oliver Hardy to a certain extent. The way his mannerisms and the way he moved and stuff like that. There was a certain amount. He obviously took some inspiration from the way Oliver Hardy did things.
Yeah. No, I think Hardy. There's Abbott Costello in there a little bit. Yeah. Those classic trios and pairs, comedy pairs that you would see in the 40s and into the 50s. Yeah. By the mid 50s, I think that was starting to die off a little bit. But this film does feel a bit older in its presentation than maybe other 50s movies do. Maybe not. I don't know. Like, this was still kind of the early days of Hollywood, but they were, just getting into color films and things like that. But this would have been very comfortable as a black and white.
Oh, certainly, yeah. But I think the color added something to it because the setting...
It's pretty vibrant.
It's very, very vibrant. And the setting, because you are on this sort of tropical island, and they're talking about the heat a lot, that the color helped bring that to life for me.
I mean, maybe that's why Isabel kept passing out.
Yeah, there's a great line about her fainting from Aldo Ray when she faints the second time. She's like,
where do you want to put her? Same place.
Yeah. And then he makes some sort of comment about how she keeps fainting as well. It's like, if she just stay awake.
Yeah, they were going to run, and then it's like, well, I'd like to see her eyes open before we go.
Yeah,
but he was a little sweet on her too. So.
He was, and there's some great scenes between him and Isabel as well, because he helps build up her self-confidence about herself.
Yeah, and basically says you can go on without her, because when she reads that note initially that Paul's coming for the holidays with his uncle, but he's been arranged to marry somebody else for business purposes.
Yeah, and it devastates her.
Yeah, it devastates her, and she's going to run away to commit suicide. That's what they say.
Yeah.
And of course it's Aldo Ray who kind of talks her down and says, well, nothing's written in stone, go talk to him.
Yeah, and he's the one who tells her that she's beautiful and attractive.
Builds her up. And even at that point, you can see this young 18-year-old girl who is lovelorn over Paul. You can already see that fracturing and going, oh, this guy's kind of cute too.
Yeah.
and you can see that there's a mutual attraction there.
There is, and he reaffirmed for her that just because Paul was the first one to find her attractive or to tell her that she was attractive, he wouldn't be the only one.
Yeah.
Right? And they even reference that near the end of the movie where she says, I'm past it, there are other men, and that wasn't the right man for me.
Yeah.
Right?
And she realizes other men do find her attractive, and that you don't have to be married off by 18. Maybe in the 1800s you did, but maybe by 18 in 1895 you were an old maid. But yeah, I think there's a good message there. It's like, don't be in a rush.
Yep. It's such a beautifully told story, and I mean both stories are about redemption.
Yeah,
right?
There's not a single character where they don't help in the family.
Except for Paul and Andre. And let's be clear, they don't kill them.
No, they plot the murder, but in the end, they kind of do themselves in because of their greedy and maniacal nature.
Yes, and that's what makes it work so well is
they did it to themselves.
Yeah, there's this karmic thing happening within the movie as well.
Yeah,
right.
And there's a bit at the end with Ustinov saying it was almost like this was made to happen.
Yeah.
This was like a scripted moment or something, which I don't know if it's inside baseball or if he's representing, thinking about a higher power in that comment. But it is apropos because everybody comes out better for it, even except for Paul and Andre, who get bitten by a tiny little snake that we never see.
No, we never do see it, but they describe him very well.
They do a very good job describing very well. I mean, if anybody's seen a coral snake or something like that, that's kind of what it was.
Yeah. And he's their buddy. They know he's dangerous, but they still love him because they took out the mean guard. He took out the mean guard.
Took out the mean guard, and Andre, obviously, he takes this container that's holding the snake thinking that the convicts have stolen it from the stock.
Yeah.
And then they all drag their ass and they draw cards about who should warn him. Like, you could tell, like, well, maybe if he gets bit, this isn't too bad.
Yeah.
And then eventually Bogart's the one that has to go in and, okay, I'll tell him. Walks in. He comes out really fast. And
You didn't tell him. He knows already.
Yes. Yes.
And then the whole point is trying to get somebody else to find the body.
Yes, which was a great comedy of errors. It was so much fun.
It is. It's like, oh yeah, when you want to hide a body, everybody's falling all over it. But when you want them to find it, then nobody will go look.
Yeah,
it's because everyone's afraid of Andre.
Yes,
nobody wanted to confront him.
No, they really didn't because he was a really nasty man.
Oh man. Like nasty out of the gate. Yeah. Never got better.
Right, and they established that he's going to be nasty through the dialogue early on in the movie, that he's not a nice man.
Yeah.
Right, and that he's got a single purpose and nothing will deviate him from that. And he doesn't care about anything else.
No, it's Christmas Eve. He's got a lot of money, and then he even screws the cab driver.
Yes. Yeah. They make sure that you don't like him. Before you even meet him, they make sure you don't like him. And then he just reinforces it from the moment he's on the screen. No, he's really unlikable. And I like the fact that they made you unsure about Paul right up until his heel turn.
Mm-hmm.
Because,
he does kind of sit on the fence, but you could see he's already his father's son.
Or his uncle's son. Uncle's protege, yeah.
Yeah, his uncle's protege, and he's really taken after him.
Yeah, they kind of hinted that first time where Aldo's talking to him about going out to the garden to meet Isabel, and he's like, well, I don't love her. I'm going to marry this woman, right? Because that's what I need to do for the business.
Yeah.
Right? He's already kind of hints at it without telling you outright, like I'm just like my uncle.
Yeah, you do see him soften a bit during the meeting.
But that's lust rather than love. It's really clear, even though it's really subtly done.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. It's lust more than love. And then when Andre finds them together, he freaks out, and Paul's like, this was for the best anyway.
And you can tell that he's not committed to her, and she realizes it at that point.
Yeah.
Right? That's where she has her moment of realization.
When he doesn't stand up for her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she doesn't make that clear that she's understood that until later on, before she finds his body.
Yeah, because then they spend all this time looking for the snake because they can't find the snake. They're planning to leave, and they're gathering their things up, including the snake, because let's face it, that might come up.
Yep.
And everybody knows they have this snake. So Paul's the one that has to go into Andre's room to wake him up. And he's like, oh, what a funny thing. This snake bit me on the finger. Oh.
Where'd you find it? In the oddest place, in his pocket.
In his pocket. Which they just laugh about because, of course, he put it in his pocket. But what were you doing in his pocket is more the case. Why were you reaching into his pockets? Like, greedy little fucker.
Yeah. Another subtle moment.
Yeah, I mean, this is the guy who also burned up the will.
Yes,
I mean,
fake will.
The fake will.
Yeah, and I love that bit where he burns up the will because it's very much that 40s mustache twirling villain moment. Right?
It is.
Because even the look on his face is that same look.
Every time Bogart makes a fake document, he can't use it.
Yeah.
Hopefully he made one more before they left.
Hopefully. Fingers crossed. I mean, at that point...
I would think that
there would be no more heirs.
They are the only heirs left, yeah. So it wouldn't have been a big deal.
No, but there were a few loose ends, but the story itself was just so...
because, they've learned that they're good people as well, but there's a whole lot worse outside. They actually make the decision to go back to jail, even though they were scot-free. They were already getting on the boat to go to Paris just before they board. It's like...
There's always next year.
Yeah, we'll try next year if it doesn't work out. But I think they'll like us. They'll be happy to see us back in prison.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, they're...
that ending was like... But let's face it, they did unintentionally... They had plotted murder, and then it kind of happened anyway, without them actually having to instigate it.
Through accidents.
So there were certain acts that they probably needed to pay for.
Yeah, and I mean, it was a commentary on how predictable prison is versus the outside world, because they didn't plan on any of this happening.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and this adjustment, I mean, this instant thing that's happening in the outside world, and it's screwed up their whole structure and of how they live. And
their evaluations of themselves.
Yeah.
Because you can tell that they're reevaluating themselves as they go through the movie. It's like, well, am I really this person? Mm-hmm. Right? Like, I have this skill set, and I'm really good at it, but is this who I really am?
Yeah. And these themes actually do carry over into the remake.
They do.
Yeah.
They do.
And
not as well.
Not as well. There are 3 criminals that break out. It's actually one really, really bad man who's on death row.
About to be executed.
Yeah, he's about to be executed. And Ned and Jim, which is Sean Penn and Robert De Niro. Robert De Niro's Ned. And they're just kind of dragged along because they just happen to be there.
Well, they just happened to be there. They were getting dressed down by the warden because they talked during his speech about part of the execution, which was
nonsense,
and it was hard to watch. It just right at the beginning of the movie, you're taken out of it.
Yeah, it is. You're absolutely right. It takes you out of it. I mean, you're in the jail, which was a pretty great set, by the way. But it just was such a nonsense, egotistical thing on the warden's part, mainly because I guess you're supposed to hate him because he's going to turn up later anyway.
Yeah.
But he doesn't play that much. But it's such a weak thing to pull guys aside for.
It really is. And, I mean, he's obviously the Andre character. Right?
Yeah.
Right? But they bringing him in as early as they did and making it so blatant was jarring.
And, well, I mean... That's something we didn't get to see in the original film was the jailbreak.
And I don't think it was necessary.
No, you're right. It isn't. If you want to keep the film fairly small, this is almost 1990 and 1989. They've got more money to spend now, and they can
and I think they wanted to bring some action into it.
Yeah, they wanted to bring a little of excitement into
some motion.
This comedy.
Yeah, because the original it's essentially, like I said, a single set piece, whereas this one's quite elaborate as far as sets and locations and so on within the movie. So, and I think they wanted to bring some of that motion that modern audiences kind of expect from their films, whereas in the 50s you expected a lot of dialogue and the dialogue to drive the story for you.
Yeah, and they managed to separate Bobby from Ned and Jim fairly early in the film once they escape.
Yes.
Until much later, because Bobby doesn't get to go through what the other two are going through, where through circumstance they're kind of forced into the church to hide.
Yes.
Because dogs are coming through and whatnot, and this is a good place to at least lay low. This small border town has been descended on by the papacy, because they're going to be taking this Weeping Madonna monument over the border
to their sister parish.
Which is an actual thing that happens, apparently.
Yeah. There's lots factual in this in the movie. And I think it was a wise decision to take Bobby out of the equation until later in the movie because that character was non-redeemable.
Yeah, no, this guy was going death row, and he's a hardened criminal.
Yes.
With these guys, you get the feeling that they've done bad things, but I don't think they're violent.
No, I don't get that impression at all, or didn't at all. I think that particularly in Jim,
like gangsters, though.
Yeah, I think in Jim's case, I think that he's just one of those people who ended up making some mistakes and ended up in prison because of them.
Yeah,
that's the feeling I got from that character, just because he's so naive and innocent, and the questions he asks, even while they're in prison, suggest that he's
definitely seeking something to fill a hole in his life, and during the course of this movie, he finds that with the church.
Yes, which is, as I said, probably the strongest part of the movie.
Yeah, I think at least his story arc comes off quite well.
He's the one who really has one.
Yeah, he really is. I mean, De Niro's kind of got one with...
one of the most annoying characters ever to hit film.
Demi Moore.
I
don't either. She feels so lost in this part. It's a bad part.
It is. It's all the script.
Yeah, this script is bad. So she has a kid, a deaf and mute kid, but the mute part at least feels more psychological than anything else. And she's turning tricks just to make ends meet. And she's unrepentant about it. That's actually something I liked about the original, too, is they're very honest about who they are.
Yes.
And so is she.
Yes. Right. And I do like that aspect of her character, but it's so over the top.
Yeah.
And she's so angry.
Yeah. This one's a few years later. I think this takes place in the 1930s. Yeah. But she's very much... like hardened feminist, and hostile about it.
Yeah, it actually, that hostility actually takes away from the strength of the character because
it's so much and so over the top all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
And she's really hostile towards the church for her own reasons. And again,
they never really get explained. She's just very untrusting. I think it's because they descend on this town every year and disrupt.
No,
things.
she does explain it. She has this. She shouts at Ned about how can she believe in a god if she's been given a broken child.
Yeah,
right. A child who with a disability, and who can God make my child better?
Yeah,
right. And it isn't until Jim speaks later in the movie that she starts to recover her own faith.
Yeah, which honestly think the kid's just outing them, but.
Yeah.
Because they're just trying to use the kid to get across the border. They needed somebody to speak for somebody with an ailment.
Yeah.
Hopefully that the Madonna can cure or whatever. So just through happenstance of meeting Molly, they're like, hey, there's this kid. Yeah. Can we take him? Can we take him over the border?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Unless you pay me $100.
Yeah. Right. Which is, it all feels kind of icky.
Yeah, it does. And that's the problem with this movie, is that when you watch it with a slightly critical eye, is there's lots of icky in this movie.
Yeah.
There's the ickiness of her selling her body.
Yeah.
There's the ickiness of her being as material as she is. I need money.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why she's selling her body, obviously, because she needs the money for $5. You can have a go at her. Mm-hmm. Right, and there's actually Bruno Kirby's kind of fun in this movie too, but
yeah, here's this desperate prison guard.
He's a deputy, yeah,
he's a deputy, and he's stressed about life. He's slept with a girl that's not his wife, and he's very repentant, but almost panicky. Yeah. So,
yes,
I love when he gets shot.
Yeah. Yes.
And he's like, "Oh, I've been shot. Good for you."
Yeah. Yeah. There was you're right. This is one of those moments where there's some great dialogue in this movie, and I did not realize that Bruno Kirby had passed.
Oh no, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
either.
He was only 57.
Oh. He was such a main staple in the 80s. This is actually a good time to go through this cast as well. Bruno Kirby was probably best known for his role in City Slickers, which is a couple of really great movies, to be honest, with Billy Crystal. Robert De Niro, of course, was Ned. Sean Penn was Jim. I don't have to go through De Niro's resume, do I? Really? No.
No.
Sean Penn also... huge resume. Mystic River, come on.
Yeah. Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Fast Times at Ridgemont High, absolutely. Demi Moore, also huge body of work. Charlie's Angels, and you all loved her in Striptease, right? Right.
G.I. Jane, I'm sorry, that movie, I really enjoyed that movie. I might not so much now, but I did enjoy it.
I don't think I've seen that one.
Yeah.
Hoyt Axton was Father Levesque. I really liked him, actually, in this movie.
Yeah.
I was one of the few who did. He was kind of the head of the local church, not the one that descended from Rome, because there was the Italian dude that needed the translator. But Hoyt, you might remember from Gremlins, is one of the lovable neighbor guys. Bruno Kirby, of course, was the deputy. Ray McAnally was the warden. You might remember him from My Left Foot.
Yes, he had quite a extensive career, but as that supporting character.
Yeah. Yeah, and he was nasty man in this one. James Russo was Bobby from Donnie Brasco. Not the only one.
No, not the only one. And as you're going through the list, I'm like, because Ray McAnally was one of those actors I thought we talked about before, but I think we haven't. James Russo, I thought, had popped up in a supporting role in something, but no.
No, we really didn't have a lot of ties in either of these movies. Wallace Shawn, who played the translator, I mean, y'all know him as the dinosaur from Toy Story, and of course Princess Bride. Yeah. Inconceivable. It's inconceivable that you don't know who Wallace Shawn is. Me and Trish got to see Wallace Shawn at Calgary Expo in a panel, and you think about all the dialogue he delivers in some of these movies and that voice. But as a normal human being, he delivers everything super slow, like he's a giant tortoise.
Yes.
It was almost arduous to watch, but I'm sure he's really nice.
I'm sure he is as well.
But hearing him talk is a cure for insomnia. John C. Reilly makes a film debut here, and of course he's gone on to hundreds of movies. You just saw him in Guardians of the Galaxy, and he's Wreck-It Ralph. He's finding some success in animation as well.
Incredibly talented human being.
Yeah, he absolutely is. He's somebody I took time to warm up to as he got more and more famous, but getting bigger and bigger roles actually wound up making me warm up to him more.
Yeah. Chicago was the one that turned me because he was the only part of Chicago I liked.
Right.
I hated that movie, but I liked him.
Jay Brazo was the sheriff. We actually did talking about
insomnia.
Yes. We actually talked about a movie called Insomnia in episode 89.
Yes.
Which will not put you to sleep. If you want a good episode, go check that out. Elizabeth Lawrence was Mrs. Blair. She was in Unbreakable. And, of course, Jessica Jickles was also in this as Rosie.
Yes.
She was the young girl.
No. And, like I said, with this cast, I kind of felt that De Niro was phoning it in a little bit.
Yeah, I think he was just kind of kicking back and playing a familiar character, channeling a lot of his Italian mob-type characters.
Them and some of his hood rat characters from the early Scorsese films.
Yeah, I always feel it's a bit weird when he's trying to deliver comedy. Because he does this weird thing with his face.
Yes.
when he's doing comedy. And it's hard to describe.
Yeah, and you're right. That's exactly it. Is he can be funny. He can be. Yeah. But it's hit or miss when it comes to comedy for him.
And he's got some decent dialogue in this movie, but instead of these characters running around kind of helping people, De Niro especially feels like it's all just driven out of selfishness for the most part. Until near the end of the film, when we have the action sequence of Bobby returning and hiding within the Madonna statue as they're carrying it over the border, and then he pops out midway for no real reason.
Well, there's a reason.
It doesn't feel like he could have stayed hidden.
He could have stayed hidden.
But he's such a fiery nature about him that he was too paranoid that he came out and thought he was going to get caught. So hostage situation, he gets gunned down. That sends the Madonna toppling over the bridge, which pulling the kid down, and then De Niro does a whole jump off the bridge, save the kid thing.
Yes, and Jim is the one who saves the kid first by tackling Bobby and then sets him up so the police have a clear shot at him.
Yeah, and it is working within the church and this connection to Molly and the kids, and they're not terrible people, that they do find some redemption in themselves. So you can see where the themes from the original are kind of here, but they certainly don't play out in the same way at all, where they are almost like three angels in the original film that have been graced this family who desperately needed their help. there's nobody really there except for maybe Molly, and there's not a lot that's actually done.
No, there's
to
not.
help her at all. She just kind of gives in and says, "Yeah, you can take my kid."
Yeah, and that's the big flaw in this movie is Jordan doesn't capture that gradual path to redemption. It's like I'm a jerk, I'm a jerk, I'm a jerk, I'm a jerk, I'm a jerk. Oh, I'm going to be a hero.
Yeah.
Right. That's the way it feels in this movie, except for Jim's character. Jim's arc does sort of show him questioning and gradually realizing that that's where he wants to be. Because there's a point about halfway through the movie he says, I'm thinking that I might like to do this. I might like being a priest. Right. There's a moment there where they hint that Jim's already on his path, but you don't really get Ned's path until that apocryphal moment. I don't even know if that's a real word or not. Just go with it.
Yeah.
Where the child goes over
he realizes he cares about Molly and her son.
Yes. And
her daughter.
Sorry. Yeah. And it's hard to swallow that because he never shows any signs of changing towards being that kind of person.
No, I don't think he really became all that much better. He found somebody who's like equally as hard as he is and equally as broken, and found at least a connection there.
Yeah, because even right up at the end of the movie there, he's stealing money off the Madonna to try and come up with $100 to pay Molly.
Yeah, to pay Molly, and he's still looking to go to Canada.
Yeah.
And in the end, he gets what he wants. He goes to Canada, and it's Jim who stays behind to carry out his calling with the church, who I think really actually knows who he is.
I suspect they probably do, but his devotion and his kindness, because he is kind. He's the kindest character in the whole movie. That's why it was so believable. And you get the feeling the only person that Ned actually cares about is Jim. Even though he gets mad at Jim all the time, he's the only person that Ned actually cares about in the whole film until the end. And even then, I'm not sure he actually cares about Molly so much as she's a means to an end. And he's kind of interested in her because, like you said, she's kind of broken too. Right? And he brings her and her daughter to Canada with him. And that felt really awkward, actually. At the end of the movie, it's like, I don't see how that transition would have happened.
No, I didn't see a whole lot of growth there, and it was, I think initially she was just seeing him over to Canada, but like there's no explanation as to why she's going to Canada at this point.
No, there's not.
There's not sending, and maybe it's the connection because, he just saved her daughter, but it's weak. It's so weak.
It is very weak.
Let's let the crowd make some judgments by running the trailer here, and we'll get right back into this.
In the dead of winter, two desperate criminals escape from prison near the Canadian border. Some believe they perished in the woods.
Hey, I found them for you.
Sheriff, do you know who these are? Caroline has found our lost priest. This is Father Brown and Father Riley.
But who would believe that such a small town could make such a big mistake?
You don't look a thing like your pictures. Fasting and prayer.
Now, they've got a profession to fake.
Bishop Nogalich points out it's his turn to say the grace.
Let him read it. It's his turn. I don't want to get in anybody's face here.
A confession to take.
That's me, Father Privacy. I've been sleeping with this woman.
Huh? All right, and what? You're not married to her?
No.
You married someone else?
To my wife.
You like know about this?
No.
Well, what are you worried about then? Forget about it.
A woman to win.
Yeah, well, you don't like the guy. What'd you go to bed with him for?
For $5. What, and you got $5? I'll go to bed with you, too. What, you think that's a sin?
Actually, you got $5.
Get out of here.
And a future to plan.
Be some booze and some bras, and this country can kiss my...
Robert De Niro.
Father, I've been shot.
I'm very happy for you.
Sean Penn.
Be nice to strangers, because sometimes you're a stranger, too.
This is not a fitting grace.
What's wrong with it?
We're no angels.
He says that there's something wrong about you.
Yeah, you told him you don't know the half of it.
All right, that was the 1989 We're No Angels, one of two escaped convicts into the church movies that came out that year. The other one being Nuns on the Run.
Yeah. Yes, and I'd forgotten about that movie.
Yeah, I can't remember who was in it. Robbie Coltrane, and I don't remember who the other one was.
Honestly, I don't even think I've even seen it.
I think I've seen it.
But listening to the trailer again here just through your headphones, because it was loud, there's that bit there where Demi Moore's delivering her line about $5, I'll go to bed with you. And I just want to say that the character is really poorly written and unlikable, but her performance in that role was actually quite good.
No, I mean,
she delivered. She gave it everything she had.
Yeah, no, her conviction to the character was totally there. It just wasn't written very well.
No, it wasn't. Before we went into the little break there was something I wanted to mention that I really did like about this movie is the small bits where the young priest is so enthralled with Jim. Mm-hmm. Where because at the beginning of the movie, if you miss it, if you're not watching, you'll miss it, is when they're stealing the clothes, he has a clothespin stuck to his back of his collar.
And he manages to turn it into a parable when the young priest finds it.
That's right. And then the young priest is wearing a clothespin around his collar later on in the movie.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, that's really good, subtle, and I liked it. And then there's the bit where they come in, and I missed how they lost their shoes. I don't know. I must have looked away because all of a sudden they had no shoes. And the young priest asked them, well, where are your shoes? And De Niro delivers a great line where he says, it brings us closer to the earth. And immediately he's like, takes off his boots and his shoes and starts walking around barefoot. Mm-hmm. Right? That one was not as subtle, but I love how they show his influence on him, albeit unintentionally. Mm-hmm. But they reaffirm his faith and they strengthen his faith so well.
After they took the chains off, maybe they had to take their shoes off to get the chains from the chain.
No, it was quite a bit later in the movie.
Yeah, I don't remember how they lost their shoes either.
Yeah, and I don't know how I missed it. Like I said, I mean, I was nowhere near as engaged in this film as I was the original, so yeah. I did lose focus occasionally.
Yeah, no, I was in a similar boat that day when I watched it.
Yeah, so there are parts that even though I was watching it, I may have missed.
But it pops you out so early in the movie that you're just trying to get through it after the first 5 minutes.
There's a certain amount of that. Yeah, there are moments there where you get dragged back in.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's painful, right? Every time they get to that border crossing and then they're halfway across the bridge and they have to go back.
Yeah. I mean, at least that feels like a bit of classic comedy there.
It does.
But it's tired.
It is tired.
Yeah.
It felt
especially
tired.
by 89.
Yes. I wanted to like it again. Like I said, the first time I saw it, I did enjoy it, and I remember enjoying it. Not enough to watch it again, mind you, but I do remember going, "Well, that was okay." And I think it is still an okay film, if that's the type of film that you're in the mood for and enjoy. But like I said at the beginning of the podcast, as soon as you start comparing it to something as strong as that original film, it's going to fall flat.
I want to make that one a Christmas staple now because it's just so good.
It is so good, and it's so wonderfully performed and written, and it does not feel like almost 2 hours. It's an hour and 43 minutes or something like that.
They're actually pretty close to the same. The original one's 106 minutes, and the remake's exactly the same. So... So there you go.
Yeah, no, I knew they were close. Not that close, mind you.
Well, in their IMDb ratings, let's see what the critics say here. The original film's got a 7.5 out of 10.
That's low.
IMDb. I think it's a little low for that movie, but it's still a decent number. And it's 6.1 for the remake.
And that I would agree with that difference.
Yeah,
right. I mean, it's not a huge difference because, like I said, I think it's a good film. Just not in comparison to
and it feels definitely more of a this is okay.
Yeah.
Whereas I think maybe the original is even underrated at 7.5. Now, Rotten Tomatoes, this is a 1955 movie, so they didn't actually have enough critic ratings to come up with a critic rating, but the audience gave it an 82%.
That's more in line with how I would feel about it.
Exactly. And Rotten Tomatoes critic score for We're No Angels 1989 was 47%, and the audience was even harsher on it with 41%. Both, I think, are a little more accurate as well, which is oddly, I rarely agree with the Rotten Tomatoes scores, but the audience ones tend to average out to something that probably by today's standards is probably a little more accurate than when the film probably debuted.
Yes, and that's the other thing too, is when this film came out, it plays like a late 80s film.
Yeah.
It does not age well, whereas the 55 does.
Yeah.
Like, it ages exceptionally well. I mean, I'm gushing. I know I'm gushing. Right? But it was one of the most enjoyable film watching experiences I've had in a long time. Well, I actually shouldn't say that because we've had some pretty enjoyable ones.
We've definitely had some good watches for a good part of this first quarter of the year.
This one was just... I think it's because my expectations were so low and they were so blown out of the water.
I can't say my expectations were low. When I see Humphrey Bogart leading this movie, that set a certain expectation right away, having seen Treasure of Sierra Madre and Maltese Falcon and Casablanca and how good those movies are. I'm like, okay, I have a certain expectation, even though I know this is not anything close to those films, but I do know that there is some comedy in those films as well, that he can do.
There's some lighter moments
I
in them,
certainly didn't know how well he could do it.
But and we've talked about this before, how psychologically, when we get into the 60s and 50s and 60s films and 40s and earlier, I always have a sort of a low expectation, and I don't know, it's a mental block for me. So, but it works in my favor because then I'm always pleasantly surprised when it's such a good film, right? So I'm going to keep that block in place and let myself be really pleasantly surprised every time we watch one of these classics.
As well you should, I think. I had certain expectations. I'm like, ooh, I'm really looking forward to watching this 55 just because this is going to be a little different, at least for what I know of Bogart.
And it is.
But at the same time, I was kind of, especially after watching the 89 first, I was like, I don't want to see another, their escape into the church kind of movie. Because sometimes it does kind of grind on you a bit when it feels a little too religious. And even then, I didn't think they were very heavy-handed about it in the 89. Not really.
No. The problem with the 89 is it felt like a forced device.
It did.
It gave them a hiding place, and that was the intent of it. And Jordan and the writers used it as a way to work that path for Jim, right? And that was it. That was the sole purpose of the church being in that movie. It was Jim's path, but it took the best part of the original the original story, and threw it right out the window, which was that dynamic between our criminals and this family.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of completely different. You've got a broken family that Ned starts relating to, but the connective tissue never really comes together in a relatable and likable way. And really, all you're left with is guys escape jail and to go hide and inevitably find a different path.
Yeah,
I mean that's kind of the loose strings are still there,
but then they're very loose strings because the other part that works so well about the original is the fact that these three characters and the chemistry that they had together is what made that movie sort of, they were the focus of the story, and they knit everything together. In this remake, Ned and Jim are apart a lot of the time. They're not interacting with each other. There's no really great moments there. Like, you get the feeling that Ned cares about Jim, but they never really establish it. For the first half of the movie, he really treats Jim as more of an annoyance than somebody that he's looking saddled with because they're chained together. But it's not to the end of the movie where it's like, okay, yeah, he did kind of like Jim, right?
Yeah,
right?
He felt a little protective of him.
Yeah. So, and because you don't have that interaction all the way through the film, because for the most part in the original, all three of them are on screen together, except for those moments where they're interacting with somebody else, where Aldo Ray's interacting with Isabel. Those few moments where Bogey's in the shop selling stuff, which was fucking brilliant.
He's also a really good chef. He went out and apparently a turkey followed him against his will. And he comes in with this live turkey stuffed in his shirt. And the next time we see it, it's dead and fully plucked and ready to go in the oven. Yeah. I'm like, holy shit. Like, is there anything this guy's not good at?
I know you're supposed to get that feeling, and that's the thing. And there's some, especially in the beginning of the movie, is every time he says, "Yeah, we're just gonna go steal it."
Yeah,
right. And the joy he has on his face when he says we're gonna go steal it is because he likes it. He likes the thrill.
Yeah. When they said it, they were like, "Oh, we should get this family a turkey." And where are you going to steal a turkey? I'm like, no. Well, I'm going to buy it because this family, we can return that. But first I got to go steal the money.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's again, the strengths to the performances because, Bogey's so excited about being able to go out and steal something. Every time he says it, you're like, okay, yeah, he's looking forward to this.
Yeah.
Right? Because he gets off on the thrill.
Yeah, well, and Usnof's almost zen-like when he has to break into something.
Yeah.
Because at one point, the shopkeeper, Felix, is reluctant to give him the books to cook. And I'm like, no, they're in the safe and I'm not giving you the combination. We don't need that.
Yeah, no, it was, there's so much fun. And the cash box, which is, I don't have the keys. Like, when they first established that he has a gift for opening locks, right? Yeah. And, so much of it's nonsensical, but it works so well.
Yeah. It just watches really great on screen, even though, like, that's Probably not how you break into a lockbox, but fine. Works for me.
Yeah,
because it's very entertaining to watch.
Yeah, and it almost brings a sense of the magical into a Christmas themed film.
Yeah, because it's on a bright, warm island, it doesn't feel like it's happening at Christmas. Mainly because we're Canadian, we just used to snow and pine trees and all that stuff. And that's another thing that was really sweet about it too. Isabel comes in with this tiny little tree and the broken angels on it, and then later on they managed to get a full Christmas tree. But it's funny because even in the dialogue they tell you where it's coming from. Like they've done the back area for the Christmas dinner, and these flowers, they're just like the mayor's flowers.
Yes. Yeah. And they tell you before where they're getting them too, right?
Yeah.
But thank you for bringing up the angel on the tree, because there's
the most poetic metaphor that they did. They hammer it over your head pretty hard, but
yeah, especially at the end. I want to talk about the end walk away scene. It's funny, but yeah, when Isabel explains that yes, it's battered, but she still sees the wings and she still sees the halos.
And then she goes and kisses each of them on the cheek and realizes that she's not really talking about the ornament anymore.
Yes.
What is that pitiful object?
Oh, the Christmas tree. I forgot the angel. Here it is, the 3 angels. It was on the first Christmas tree I ever had. It wouldn't be Christmas without them. See? Just like in the carol. 3 angels came to earth that night, and all around the stars were bright.
I remember.
Your angels didn't stand the trip very well. Their wings are a little damaged.
The feathers are all gone. And they don't have halos either.
Oh, yes, they do. They have halos. To me, anyway. Their wings are perfect, and their feathers are snowy white. And they came down from the stars, even if it seemed like only the roof.
It's absolutely beautiful. And I'm going to say this now because we haven't said it yet. Watch this movie. Find it. Watch it.
Great little family film.
You should buy it. It should be in your library.
Yep, I was looking on Amazon. If you're American, you can look at it on yours, but I look on the .ca one, obviously. And Canadian, you can get it for under $8 for a DVD copy. I don't think it exists on Blu-ray, but
which is fine. It's just it is one of those movies that should be.
I looked because I'm like, I absolutely want to watch this movie over and over and over again.
It's that good. It would be a great addition to your Christmas viewing. I think you said that already. Is if you're looking for a fun film that your whole family can watch.
Yeah, initially just trying to get into it. I think I got about halfway as I'm seeing the characters come along and getting used to hearing the dialogue, and then you're just realizing you're grinning from ear to ear, and then something really belts out. Like they almost save some of the better dialogue for a little bit later in the movie so you can really start belting out some good laughs.
Yeah.
So they really build up to it because they almost say so little in the first half hour of the film because they're on the roof just watching what's going on in this household.
Yeah, and I see, and I loved the patter right at the beginning because I texted you right away.
You did.
I'm like, I love the dialogue in this movie, right? And I was only about 20 minutes in, and I already knew that this was going to be a strong movie for the dialogue.
And I was already feeling like, partway into the remake one I was watching, because like I said, I watched them in reverse, and I was like, oh, okay. When you said that, I'm like, okay, there's hope for this, because I'm like, why did they remake this? And I just want to let you know, because I haven't talked about budget yet here. The original one, it was a fairly expensive movie for 55, $1.685 million.
Holy shit.
It's pretty big. But you got Humphrey Bogart leading this movie.
And Peter Snow, who was a big name at the time.
Yeah, the exterior set's a fairly large one, but most of it happens inside. But even that set's fairly big. Box office, this is 55, so you're only getting a domestic take, but the box office was $3 million. It's not a huge success, but this is at a time where doubling your money's doing really well. Marketing isn't near what it is now. So
no, it's pretty much theater posters.
Yeah, so they didn't quite get there. This is a double your money. They did almost double their money. That's not bad, but they obviously felt good enough to head a remake up. And the remake for 89 was budgeted at $20 million. And you can see that. It's a much bigger set. Actually, a lot of it was filmed in Canada, and at the time was the biggest set they'd ever built in Canada for a film.
Interesting.
And it went on to gross in the U.S. $10.555 million. Wah, wah, wah.
Yeah, and
so didn't even make their budget back.
And I
only made half their budget.
And I can see why. I think it probably eventually made its money back on video, but it doesn't have the charm of the original. I still think it's a decent film, but it's not a great film.
Yeah, it's okay, and I'll leave it up to you to decide whether okay is worth your time or not. But the original is exceptional, and it's definitely worth your time.
Most certainly. And you know what? I just wish that I could remember some of the dialogue in that movie, because there's so much of it. It just you almost get overwhelmed by how witty and snappy the dialogue is.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, like I said, there's one line there where one of the clients comes in, the lady, a larger lady, she comes in and she's talking about the problems and the trials and tribulations of hiring convicts to work in your business, and she says,
Convicts, I say, very convenient and so cheap. Of course, you have to be careful, don't you? Not to get a thief or a sex fiend. Murderers are best, I think. They're so polite.
That was my first laugh out loud moment in the whole movie.
I really like when Joseph Humphrey Bogart is going to cook the books. Felix is like very nervous about it.
What are you going to do?
Shh. He's the Michelangelo of French Guiana.
I'm going to make you the most successful businessman on Devil's Island.
No, absolutely not.
Doing your books will be a real treat for me. You see, in business, as in everything else, there is appearance and there is reality.
But I'm an honest man.
Of course you are. That is reality. You are an honest man. But what's the good of that if your books make you look like a crook? All I'm going to do is make your books agree with your character. An entry here, decimal point there, an erasure or two, and soon you will have taken in 33,824 francs in December and 12 centimes.
Yes.
Which I'm like, to lie about your books to make it look like you're honest.
Yes.
Even though he is honest. What a great twisty dialogue tree to saying, you're a good person. I want it to look like you're a good person as well. Because you're going to get, these books are terrible and you're going to probably shut down by Andre.
And quite possibly stay on the island as a prisoner.
Yeah.
Right?
Like,
and they even say that.
They even say that.
Yeah.
Now, you listen to me, young woman. You are not to flirt with Paul. I forbid it. If you think you're going to get him along with my fortune, you are sadly mistaken.
I don't want your money.
Oh, nonsense. Everyone wants my money. Paul, most of all.
That's not true.
Don't be a little fool. He can't wait for me to die to get my millions. And that's the way it should be. I was the same at his age.
If that were true, I wouldn't love Paul. I'd hate him. You make everything seem wicked because that's the way you are yourself.
Your opinion of me has no cash value. Oh, incidentally, I've been going over your father's books, and it may well be that he will remain on Devil's Island as something other than a civilian. Good night, my dear. Pleasant dreams.
Like, he doesn't care that this is business, and family doesn't come into it at all.
No.
For Andre.
No, because Andre is a dick.
Yeah. So that was another, really great piece of dialogue.
I have the most terrible news for you. Andre's dead.
Dead?
It's true, he died in his sleep.
It was very considerate of him.
I don't know what to do.
The first thing to do is to make sure that he's dead. I don't trust him.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, that was Felix talking about his cousin.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, he is kind of a dick. Oh, he's dead? Well, that's very nice of him.
Yes, yeah, that was great. And I love the scene where Peter Ustinov's character is explaining how his wife came to be murdered.
That's how I got into trouble. I came home unexpectedly one Christmas and found my wife giving a friend of mine a present.
Too bad. I'm sorry to hear that, Jules.
It was my own fault entirely. I should have written, told her I was coming.
Yeah.
It's like he takes responsibility for it. It's my fault because I didn't warn her that I was coming home.
Yeah.
And it's like, you kind of like shake your head. And it's like,
yeah, Joseph, he's like, I regret nothing in my life. The only mistake I ever made was getting caught.
Yeah.
You know, like, just loads and loads of quotables in here.
Yes, there are. And it's so eminently rewatchable. Because I guarantee you'll find something new to laugh at every time you watch it.
Yeah, and it'll probably be something different every time.
Yeah,
I would hope. I mean, they're just...
There's so many moments.
Yeah, and it's such a a cast with great chemistry.
Yeah, yeah, and you even texted me, said, I wonder if they ever did anything together, the three of them again, because they should have. If they didn't, I mean, I don't think Bogey was around for much longer after this film. I can't remember.
No, I'd probably not. But it was such a late discovery. I'm like, oh, these guys are so good together. This would have been a great troupe.
Yes, yeah. They would have loved to at least have gotten one or two more movies with the three of them working together, because they fed each other so well.
Yeah.
Right? And the glee on their faces whenever they were on screen, because they all looked like they were just having a wonderful time.
Yeah.
And I mean, Ustinov went on to work for another 30-some years, as did Aldo Ray.
Yeah, I think Aldo Ray passed in the late 90s.
Yeah. Yeah, and
he was still pretty young. I think he was in his 60s when he passed, 65.
Yeah, and I think he's the youngest member of the cast.
He was, yeah.
But Ustinov was like 2006, I think. He
had a nice long career. Yeah.
But he was so much fun. Like I said, I loved everybody, but just his presence in this movie just made me so giddy. He's so much fun to watch. There's a certain appeal to the way he delivered lines and his facial expressions. You just want to hug the man.
Yeah, I love how he just kind of, when they were trying to fancy up, when they were trying to really do something nice for this family who's been doing nice things for them at Christmas time, to really give them a special Christmas.
Yes.
And he puts that collar with the tie,
yes,
but it's over his prison clothes, so he's got this open collar, and it's just a collar with a tie on it. The collar's not attached to anything. It's one of those fake collars that you would put over a shirt.
Well, back then they would have buttoned the collar into the shirt.
Yeah, right? Exactly. Yeah. So that's all it was the collar and the tie hanging down over his chest.
Yes, it was actually, yes, that was a lot of fun. I think, because it took me a moment to sort of realize that he's still wearing it at some point. I'm like, oh, he's still wearing that fucking collar and tie. And there's an innocence about him and Aldo Ray. Like I said, because both of them are clearly career criminals. They make it clear that they're not honest men. Right.
No, even as they're starting to like this family, they're like, we're still criminals. We're still going to rob them. We're still going to bash their heads in and take everything they have after we do the dishes.
Yes.
Like, they do everything to avoid what their normal character would do.
But the thing is, and that was the thing, is none of them were normally inclined to murder.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that they were trying to reconcile themselves with that to a certain extent. It's like, we're going to plan to commit murder, which is something we've never done before.
Yeah. I think it was something, we're escaped criminals and we got to do everything we can to survive on the lam, and realizing, we just don't have that in us.
Yes. And that's
they never come out and say that, but they don't. None of them do.
None of them do, because Bogey says, "Oh, I'm not a murderer," but they are. Right?
I love they're just so honest about it. Like, they're fresh off the boat, and when they see that doctor that plays right at the end when they're trying to hook up Isabel with a new man, he comes off that boat, and they basically surround him to rob him and intimidate him, and they flat out say, we're criminals.
Yes.
We're escaped convicts. They don't even try to hide the fact that they're escaped convicts, because they think they were counting on the fact that they wouldn't take them seriously.
Yeah. Okay, because they say it with those gleeful grins on their faces, right? Yeah. It's like they're clearly having fun. And I like the fact that they introduce the doctor early and then bring him in at the end.
Yeah.
Right? And they even say that he's probably not the one, but he's certainly going to be one of the ones to build her confidence.
Yeah.
Right? And I like that. And I mean, he was handsome.
Yeah.
No question he was handsome. And
yeah, I like how every character had a purpose, because it is a very small cast. When I listed that cast, that's the entirety of the cast.
Yeah, everybody else's extras. That's everybody who has dialogue.
Anybody whose dialogue I named.
Yeah,
because everybody else is just kind of background walking to fill the town. But if they had dialogue, that the old lady who only gets a couple of scenes, but I think she got 3.
Yeah,
she had the first one 2 in the shop, and then the one with the constable.
Yes, and that was set up beautifully as well, because Joseph basically braces her and says, "You need to pay your bill," right?
It's a little bit of the old criminals, like, okay, well, you owe us money, let's pay up. Like, these poor guys are hemorrhaging because they're too nice, and they're like, keep handing over product for credit that clearly this lady has, but is unwilling to pay.
Yes, and so when she gets
she gets pissed off because you're questioning her character. And I'm like, well,
and I think actually says, "Who's the criminal here?"
Yeah.
Right? Or there's a point there where it's suggested that like the real criminals are the ones walking around free.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is a theme throughout where people parading as honest people and are the worst.
Yeah, and there actually is a line there that says, "Let's go back." When they say let's go back to prison, people are more honest there. That's the line.
Yeah.
It's something along that is that at least the people in prison are honest about the people they are.
Yeah.
There's no pretense and charade about it.
Yeah, I mean, geez, We're No Angels. What a wonderful, wonderful film.
Yes, and
an okay one.
and an okay one. One of the things that we were talking about during the break too, and I wanted to mention it, is the final scene of the original film where they're all walking away.
Oh, the cartoon halos.
The cartoon halos, and the fact that Adolf got one made me so happy. Adolf deserved one.
Adolf the Snake. Yeah, well, it's funny because Adolf killed 2 people.
Yes,
but he still got his little halo
because he did what his instincts on to do.
I'm going to call him an archangel.
Yeah. Yes, but yes, yes, it was hokey, but I still thoroughly enjoyed that little bit.
It was just cute.
Yes, right. And it was a fitting end to a cute film.
Yeah.
Right, and I mean, I'm loath to use the term "cute" about this film, but it does have that element to it.
Yeah, it's a bit of an eye roll, but it's a sweet one in that regard as well. It's like, okay, yes, yeah, it's the period at the end of the sentence.
You just read my mind again. Damn you!
Yeah, I think that's the period at the end of our sentence as well. We can't say enough good things about the 55. We can say some good things about the 89, thankfully.
Yes, and that's typical. We always find something good to say about these movies. We can find the best points.
At least I'll give Neil Jordan credit and the studio credit. Do believe it was Universal for trying something new here and putting it in a different setting and still trying to keep the themes. It's clumsy and it doesn't really work, but
they tried too hard.
They did try to do something to delineate it. It's not a super close remake, obviously, and I always appreciate that when they're trying something different. Definitely didn't pay off on this one.
They lost the key salient points of the original.
Yeah,
in the process.
But thankfully, it didn't really hurt anybody in this film either, career-wise. Obviously,
not by any stretch.
No.
I mean, and you look at, De Niro and Penn, obviously. And
even Neil Jordan.
Neil Jordan had an exemplary career beyond that. Even though I'm not a huge fan of his films, Debbie Moore's career, John C. Reilly has been great.
Oh boy,
James Russo.
He was at the start of his career, so there's no judgments there.
No, and he was the high point of the film.
Yeah, I mean, I think people didn't get hurt by this film mainly because the script was bad, but their performances were not. Like, they can only carry so much of a bad script on their shoulders with a good performance, but at the end of the day, if the script isn't as good as the talent's delivering it, it's not going to land.
No, and that was the case here, I think.
Yeah. And there's no chemistry between De Niro and Demi Moore.
None
at all.
No.
And that's why I think that story arc didn't land at all.
No, because they're both really shouty.
Oh, so shouty.
So shouty. But we'll shout about the rooftops on the original for sure.
And we need you guys to shout for us too. We want you to shout loud and to the heavens and to your neighbors. Listen to Invasion of the Remake! Or something equally or less dramatic.
Or more dramatic.
I leave it up to you. Be creative, but keep it legal. Keep your pants on.
No, maybe. I mean, if it's worth showing.
Hey.
We said worth. No, keep your pants on.
Keep your pants on. But hey, we're no angels. See what I did there? No, of course not. There's nothing subtle about that. Please tell your friends and family about the show. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to our social media. And, of course, subscribe to us on all the places where you can find the show. We are on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Play Music, TuneIn Radio, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, and Radio Public, where we get a little something if you you listen to us. It's very little, but for every listen, we get a little kickback from you guys. So just for doing what you're doing. So if you choose any platform, why don't you try us out on Radio Public? And make sure you follow us on our social media. We are at Invasion Remake on Twitter, Invasion of the Remake on Facebook and Instagram, and Invasion of the Remake at gmail.com. If you want to email us your suggestions, your corrections, your comments, and hey, fan challenges, we need some. Look at some of our older ones to see how we like some weird, strange stuff, and those are always gives us a lot of places to go from. So we like a good challenge too, because we've had puppets, we've had musical westerns, we've had
hard rock zombies.
Yeah, so those are some big shoes. There's some big shoes to fill, but we're willing to tackle another fan challenge if it fits the criteria set before it.
Yes. So you can't see my grin. I'm like, I love the fan challenges, even if they're like terrifying to think about watching them. They're so much fun to do.
Yeah, well, when we were presented with Meet the Feebles, I'm like, you bastard.
We got that on New Year's Eve. Because I remember you and Trish and Tyler were all over the house, and for some reason I checked our Twitter, and there's like, we just got challenged to do Meet the Feebles.
You bastard.
Yes.
I was like, oh boy, this one's going to take some thinking.
It was like, oh yeah, Peter Jackson. Oh.
It's all puppets.
It's all puppets.
This will be something. But it was fun. So go check that out. Paint Your Wagon was another fan challenge. That was a good one.
Yes,
and
it was.
Of course, Hard Rock Zombies. So go check out all those great fan challenges. And that hopefully will fuel some ideas of what to throw at us next.
Yes, and actually, I'm going to... Sean, if you're listening...
Yes. Sean specifically, he's a podcaster. So I am putting the challenge to Sean. He has to record it. I will play it on the show, his challenge on the show, but he has to send me audio of him challenging us directly, because that is the What Does It Matter podcast. And if you're a podcaster challenging me, you got to step it up.
Yes, and Sean keeps throwing stuff at me, and says, "I'm like, okay." And a lot of them are on our list already.
Mm-hmm. And you can absolutely, our fans as well. If you throw us a fan challenge, you can totally send us an audio challenge as well, and we'll run that. Just throw it over to our email address. Again, that's invasionoftheremake@gmail.com, and I'll tighten it up and we'll put it on the show, and then we'll use that to lead into the fan challenge down the road.
We most certainly will.
Sean, I know you've got an idea. I don't know what it is yet, but now I'm putting it to you. You have to record it, send it to us. I'll run it on the show, and then we'll see.
And we may even challenge you to do the challenge with us. You never know.
You never know. You never know. Depends how nasty it is.
It does depend, yeah. Well, Sean, I is one of my... Talk to him a lot. And he really loves bad movies. It's sort of his kitsch. The worse the movie, the more fun he has watching it. And he challenges me to watch some stuff sometimes. And yeah, some of it's definitely challenge-worthy.
Okay. I'm looking forward to what he's got now. He's just got to do it. He's got to challenge us. I challenge you to challenge me to do a challenge. It'll sort itself out.
Just do it.
Do it. Okay, any last thoughts about We're No Angels? I know we're no angels.
I know we aren't.
And I don't know if there's anything left to be said.
There's lots left to be said, but we'll...
Gush over 55.
Yes, and yes, we'll let you watch it and decide for yourselves how wonderful this movie is.
Yeah, I really want you guys to find this film and then leave us a comment, again, at our social media pages. You can even find us on frickin' YouTube and leave us a comment there as well. We drop every Thursday on YouTube, so make sure you subscribe and ring that bell for notifications. Otherwise, you might miss a post, and they don't always stay there. So we'll keep them up for a few weeks, depending on how bitchy YouTube's being that day. We'll keep them up as long as we can, but if there are YouTube gives us issues because of some of those movie trailers have music cues in them, and then they flag us for reasons that aren't ours. But but we may have to take them down if they're on YouTube, if they get too angry at us. So if you got the notification bell turned on, you'll be able to listen to those episodes right away. And never miss an episode. But, you've got a lot of other avenues to find an episode as well if it disappears on YouTube.
So many other avenues.
Absolutely. All right, well, I'm looking forward to remaking something next week, so join us next week. I've been Jason.
And I am always Sam.
And we will see you next week. We are out of here.
There's our boat. She's still waiting.
The rest is easy. All we do is get aboard and leave Devil's Island behind us.
It's funny how it all happened. It was kind of a miracle, the whole thing, almost as though it had been arranged.
Even the girl herself called us her angels.
Well, we're no angels.
Funny, when I was free, I was always in trouble. I don't know why I'm in such a hurry to get into trouble again. I think they'd be glad to see us back at prison.
Well, I'll say one thing for prison. You meet a better class of people.
Yes, there's a lot to be said for prison.
You always know where you are when you get up in the morning.
Yes, and I can do with a sleep.
What do you say? Prison wasn't so bad. Let's all go back. Think of the welcome we'll get.
Well, if things don't work out right, we'll do it all over again next year.